The scorching desert sun pressed down on John Holloway's neck as he stepped off the private charter at Sacramento Executive Airport. 6 months in Yemen, safeguarding oil executives, had left his skin rugged and his blue eyes even sharper. At 38, his Marine discipline was unmistakable. Back straight, shoulders squared, every move calculated. With a curt nod to the pilot, he grabbed his duffel bag. Small talk never interested him. Actions always spoke louder than words. And right. Now his only goal was to go home. The word felt foreign. After half a year away, his 5-bedroom mansion in Sacramento's most exclusive neighborhood felt more like an investment than a haven. It had been Ashley's idea. "We deserve this, Johnny," she had whispered, tracing her fingers down his chest. "After everything you've been through, don't you want something beautiful?" He had given in. He always did when it came to Ashley. The steep mortgage was brutal, but the high-paying security contracts kept their lavish lifestyle intact. Cedar Me, clothes for Ashley, private school for Holly, all funded by the risks he took. At 3 p.m., the taxi rolled up to the house. John paid the driver and took a moment to absorb the pristine lawn, the manicured hedges, the gleaming windows reflecting the golden afternoon sun. Picture perfect, like something out of a magazine. Yet, he felt nothing. Punching in the security code, he stepped inside. "I'm home," his voice echoed in the vast marble entryway. Silence. Then faint laughter from the backyard. Through the glass doors he saw them. Ashley reclining on a lounge chair, her bronzed skin glistening, a martini glass in hand. Even at 36, she was stunning. Long blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, body toned from yoga and private training sessions he paid for, but had never met the trainer. And Holly, his 16-year-old daughter, floating lazily on an inflatable swan, phone raised above her face, scrolling endlessly, snapping the occasional selfie. Neither had noticed him. John watched for a full minute, an outsider in his own home. A familiar hollowness expanded in his chest, the same emptiness he had felt in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in every war-torn city where he had fought, killed, and survived. Sliding the door open, he stepped onto the patio. Ashley's eyes flicked to him, widening slightly, not in joy, but in surprise. "Johnny?" she said, sitting up. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "Caught an earlier flight." He set his bag down. Holly barely glanced up. "Hey, Dad," she muttered, tossing the words out like spare change to a beggar. John's jaw tightened. She had been 7 when he first deployed, running to greet him, eyes wide with admiration. Now she wouldn't even meet his gaze. Ashley stood, adjusting her bikini, pressing a dry kiss to his cheek. The scent of suntan lotion, expensive perfume, and something else. A hint of cologne. A man's cologne. "Let me get you a drink," she offered, breezing past him into the kitchen. John followed, watching as she poured bourbon into a glass with practiced ease. "How was the job?" she asked, sliding the drink toward him. "The same," he replied, taking a slow sip. "Dangerous, boring, in between." Ashley nodded, eyes flickering away. "We've been busy here too. Holly's been killing it in school, straight A's last semester." A lie. John had checked her grades before leaving, mostly C's with a single A in math. "And I've been redecorating," Ashley continued. "Wait till you see the West Wing. West Wing. As if they lived in a palace instead of a house with a mortgage that kept John risking his life overseas. "Sounds great," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Holly sauntered in, dripping water onto the imported tile. "Are we still going to Aunt Carol's for dinner?" she asked, barely masking her impatience. There was no Aunt Carol. Ashley smiled too quickly. "Of course, honey. Go get changed." Holly rolled her eyes and disappeared upstairs. John studied his wife. "Dinner at Carol's, huh?" Ashley topped off her glass, gaze evasive. "Just a casual thing. I was going to tell you tomorrow." Another lie, he let it slide. "I should shower." Upstairs, steam billowed as John stood under the scalding water, muscles tensed, mind racing. The bathroom was another of Ashley's Expensive renovations, marble, glass, space for four. His mind drifted to their first apartment. A cramped one-bedroom, furniture from Goodwill. Ashley had called it cozy, said they didn't need luxury, just each other. When had that changed? Had she always been this way? Or had he been too blind to see it? John stepped out, wiped steam from the mirror, and stared at the reflection. Weathered face, lined from years in the sun, a scar along his jaw. Lean, functional muscle. A soldier's. Body, a survivor's face. From his duffel he retrieved a small velvet box. Inside, a platinum necklace with a single diamond. Simple, elegant, something Ashley would have once loved. Now, he wasn't sure she deserved it. That night, as Ashley slept off her wine and Holly whispered on the phone, John sat at her desk, logging into her computer. Passwords cracked easily. Emails, bank records, property deeds, Roy Calloway, CEO, Ashley's friend for 18 months. A secret, cabin in Tahoe, divorce papers ready to be filed. A plan meticulously laid out to leave John with nothing. His fingers traced over his grandfather's dog tags, the only thing in his safe that still held meaning. Upstairs, Ashley's soft snores filled the silence. Holly's music pulsed behind closed doors. John sat in the dark, bourbon in hand, staring at the lies he had been living. Tomorrow, they would wake up thinking everything was normal. They had no idea. Owen Holloway had built his life around his wife, Ashley, and their daughter, Holly. He believed in love, trust, and the sanctity of marriage, until the day he discovered the unbearable truth. His wife was betraying him with his closest friend, Roy. Betrayal cuts deeper than any knife, and John felt its cold edge slice through his soul. He didn't explode in rage or confront them immediately. Instead, he let the darkness settle within. Him, planning every detail of his retribution with precision. The stage was set. One evening, under the pretense of a weekend retreat, John invited Ashley and Roy to an isolated cabin in the mountains. Holly was safely away at her grandmother's, unaware of the storm brewing in her father's heart. As they sat by the fire, sipping wine, laughing, mocking him in their oblivious joy, John excused himself and disappeared into the shadows. And later the lights flickered and died. The cabin plunged into darkness. A chilling voice echoed through the room. "Do you know what it feels like to have your heart ripped out?" Panic set in. Ashley reached for her phone, but there was no signal. Roy lunged for the door, only to find it locked from the outside. John emerged, his eyes hollow, void of the love they once held. "I gave you my world, and you burned it to the ground. Now it's my turn to play with fire." What followed was a night of psychological torment. Every step they took, every breath they gasped, John was there, watching, whispering, reminding them of their sins. He didn't need brute force. Fear was his weapon, and it was far deadlier. By the time morning arrived, Ashley and Roy were shells of their former selves, reduced to trembling wrecks. And John? He had already disappeared into the dawn, leaving behind only a note. Betrayal doesn't destroy the betrayed. It destroys the betrayer. John had spent months laying the groundwork, letting them believe they'd won, letting them grow complacent in their victory, letting them spend his money, sleep in his bed, and laugh about his disappearance. All part of the plan. On screen, Ashley and Holly had moved from the living room to the kitchen, uncorking a bottle of wine, despite Holly being high, underage. John zoomed in, capturing the moment of casual lawbreaking, adding it to his growing file of evidence against them. His burner phone buzzed, the untraceable one. A message from the private investigator he'd hired. Package delivered. Confirmation. By morning, John texted back a single word. Acknowledged. Turning back to the monitors, he watched Ashley pick up her phone. She was texting Roy. With a single keystroke, John activated the spyware he had installed weeks ago. The conversation appeared on a separate screen. Ashley, miss you already. Roy, it's only been 2 hours. Ashley. Too long. When can we stop this? Separate houses bullshit. Roy. Soon. My guy says the divorce should be final in a month. Ashley. Then Europe? Roy. Then Europe. Pick a country. Any country. Ashley. Monaco first. Then maybe Switzerland. I've always wanted a chalet. Roy. Whatever you want, baby. Sky's the limit. John's face remained unreadable. Assets in Switzerland. Of course. Roy was smarter than he looked, but not smart enough. He switched to another monitor showing Roy's downtown penthouse. The businessman was on his own phone, but he wasn't texting Ashley. This call was to someone named Vance, discussing offshore accounts, shell companies, and a special delivery coming in next week. Drug money laundering, added to the fraud charges John had already set in motion. Roy Calloway was looking at Sirius. Federal time. John checked the time. Nearly midnight. 8 hours of watching, barely moving. Some men would have found it exhausting. John found it clarifying. On screen, Ashley and Holly were saying goodnight. Lights switched off one by one. Shadows stretched across empty rooms. Perfect timing. He reached for the second burner phone, the one purchased for a single purpose. He dialed. On screen, in Ashley's bedroom, her phone lit up with an unknown number. She frowned, but answered. Hello? John said nothing, just breathed. Quietly, hello? Who is this? Her voice sharpened. Still, John remained silent. Listen, it's midnight and I don't appreciate… Did you miss me? The voice was deep, distorted by the modulator. Ashley went still, color draining from her face. Who is this? You know who it is. Ashley bolted upright in bed, eyes darting around the room, searching for something, someone. John. Her voice was barely a whisper. Is that you? Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could just leave me in the desert and I'd disappear? I don't know what you're talking about. She was already calculating, trying to spin it, to turn this to her advantage. But John had learned from the best. Enjoy what you have, he said, voice like a demon from the depths. While you still have it. He ended the call. On screen, Ashley sat frozen, then frantically dialed Roy. No answer. Again. Still nothing. John switched to Roy's penthouse feed. The businessman was in the shower, his phone on the nightstand, oblivious to Ashley's. Rising panic. Back in Ashley's room, she was pacing, phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. She tried Roy a third time, gave up, dialed someone else. I need to speak to Detective Warner. It's an emergency. John leaned back in his chair. Satisfaction settled in his chest like a warm stone. The first domino had fallen. Across town, in an anonymous motel room, a man pressed a final keystroke. 6 weeks of financial data compiled into a neat, anonymous tip, sent to the FBI, the SEC, and 3 major news outlets. At a courthouse, a clerk filed paperwork exposing Ashley Holloway's fraudulent activities, her siphoning of John's assets, her false reports. And in a garage across the city, a mechanic put the finishing touches on a matte black motorcycle. Custom built for a client who paid in cash and asked no questions. The pieces were in place. John Holloway hadn't come back. Not yet, but he would. And when he did, nothing would be the same. He picked up the burner phone one last time, sending a text to Ashley's number. Sleep well. I'll be watching. Then he dropped the phone into a bag of dissolving acid and began preparing for phase 2. The real work was just beginning. Ashley gripped the phone tighter as the voice on the other end chuckled. Not stolen, Ashley. Reclaimed. And this is just the beginning. John, please, she pleaded. We can talk about this, whatever you think happened. I don't think, he cut in coldly. I know. I saw everything. I heard everything. All your plans with Roy, all your lies. Ashley collapsed into a chair, her legs weak. What do you want? You'll find out soon enough. A pause, then a darker tone. Oh, and don't worry about Holly. She's next on my list. The line went dead. Terror seized Ashley as the front door slammed open. Mom? Holly called, stepping inside, furious. My car is gone. Ashley's stomach dropped. First the money, now this. Did you call the police? she asked, forcing calm. Of course, they said they'd